17 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. It may seem like we're starting a little bit late, but not really. Just a little mishap at the beginning here that caused me to leave the studio quickly to run to somewhere to come back. But we're here. Dr. Esprit was on time and she was all set to go. It is a pleasure to be here with you on another beautiful Monday night here in Dominica for the In the Spotlight radio show. And we have a young lady whom I admire. She doesn't know that, but I do admire her because of the work that she does with young people. I admire her level of intelligence and I admire who she is as a person. And I think the one time I got to know her or about her to a certain extent was when she did 767 Girls Rock. And I got to know a bit about her. I didn't realize she had a funny bone. She does. And, you know, we got to know quite a bit about her when she did that particular program with GL Josie that I had actually done before as well, the 767 Girls Rock. So we rock together as 767 Rock Girls. And she is here in studios with us tonight. You can join us via Facebook Live. Oh, quite a few viewers already. You can join us via Facebook Live on my Facebook page. At least that's where we are for now tonight. And you can, of course, listen to us via Q95 FM radio. I really want to thank Mr. Gregoire for giving me the opportunity to host this program here on Q95. I'll tell you this, Mr. Gregoire, almost every single day I meet people who talk to me about this particular program. And this is not a joke. Last Friday at the Flow store, a lady came up to me, and I know her, and she said, Fidina, you know, that program you do on a Monday night, you know, it's really, really special and so on. And she teared up. I am not lying about that. All I will say is her name is Anita. I will not give you her last name. And she really made me feel like I was doing something good and something special. And I really do enjoy coming here on a Monday night to do this for you. So wherever you are tonight listening, we promise you we're going to have a great program. And hello, Philia Murray, you've been here. Good night to you. And we know we're going to have a great program tonight on the In the Spotlight radio show with Dr. Schuyler, Esprit. I was just saying to her, what were your parents thinking when they gave you, they spelled your name the way that they did? The name is fine, I love it. But when it comes around to spelling it, you have to really make the effort. Dr. Esprit, good night.
Hi, good evening, Fidina.
Just make sure your mic is on. Let's get that. Yes, we're good.
Yeah, good evening to everyone. Good evening to all our listeners. Good evening, Fidina.
It is nice to have you here, Dr. Esprit. And Dr. Esprit actually has a PhD in English literature. And I told you she's a bright young lady. And we're going to see how bright she is. And not that I think she's going to be what the bright is tonight. I think she's just going to talk to us, you know, as Schuyler. And we're just happy to have her in the studios with us tonight. So, yes, so tell me about this name, Schuyler.
Well, it's really interesting because I found out probably later in life that my name means scholar.
Scholar!
So it was destiny. I don't know exactly, I don't remember the story of how my parents got the name, but I know it is German. And yeah, I know what it means, so it makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense.
But I'm sure that it was because everyone in my family was reading a lot.
Okay.
So
your family is a family of readers.
Yes.
They love to read.
Yes. I have one auntie Dawn, she might be listening, who says she doesn't like to read, but secretly.
Secretly she does. She's one of those who does it secretly. What is your background though? What part of? Are you Dominican first?
I'm from Maho, Dominica, born and raised.
Born and raised, Maho, Dominica. The fact that your parents gave you a German name, I thought that there was something foreign about it.
No foreign story except that maybe my great-grandparents came from somewhere else.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Maho. I am very proud to be from Maho. I like my community. I like growing up there. I had a pretty good life. Where do I start? I like to tell this story, so this is weird. Let me just say to our listeners and viewers that I said yes to Ferdinand because I like radio and I never have to do any work. And then I remembered that she does this live thing.
Oh my God, you're quite fine. You look beautiful.
So that's an added pressure.
No pressure, just relax.
You know,
ignore that. That is just pretend it's not there.
My parents were teenagers when I was born, and most people don't realize that. And I think I like to tell this story because I think we absorb so many stereotypes about teenage parents in our society and all the things that happen that are wrong with that. And I am the ultimate success story. Now, I say this because my parents have a lifelong relationship despite the fact that they were not together romantically or a couple after that. My parents are very good friends and my entire life, and I've never had a situation where my parents were in discord in any kind of way, and my parents were teenage parents. I always tell this story to remind people there are other narratives about things that happen to people, and that's a really important story about my success because they had to grow up while I was growing up. They had to learn a lot of things along the way, and the truth is they had a lot of help, but they were in a supportive environment. They had really good family to help them and to make sure that they were making the good choices for me, right, and their other children. So I think I always like to say that things happen to people at different points in their life, and I think there's always a success that comes out of it. There's always something great that happens as a result of that. And so I'm the best love child story you will ever get.
Who would have thought? I didn't know that story at all. Home teenagers, 15, 16, 18.
Yeah, but
18
teenagers. That's probably why I'm 35 and have no children yet. But
oh my God! Wait! You are the first lady who's been here, or in general that I know, who says their age just like that.
I am very, very happy to be 35. I'm very happy to be in my 30s. I don't think anybody should stay in their 20s long. I think it's a very, very crazy place to be, and I'm very happy to get older and to grow into that. I like it.
I'm just reading some comments are already coming in here. Yes, so true. We lump everyone in a group and that don't look at individual experiences. So, you know, it's quite interesting already. You're already impacting people there through the program. So your parents were teenage parents and they had to, at that point, raise a baby. But as you said, they had a lot of help.
Yes.
But you turned out to be the ultimate success story. And you come here to...
I was easy.
You were easy?
Yeah. Well, my parents will disagree. I was a sourpuss. I might still be a sour. I was a very grumpy little girl.
Really?
But yes, ask my mother. She will agree. But I was a good kid.
But you were a good child.
Yeah.
So you grew up in the community of Maho.
Yes.
Tell us about life growing up in Maho.
Where do I start?
Yes. So start from where you remember.
I grew up with my mom for a while lived with my grandmother as well. Her mom, my maternal grandmother, and I lived with my grandmother for most of my life. So the good thing about my success story is that I had a third parent at all times. And I say a third parent because she really was my primary parent for a lot of the time. And so I grew up in a house where I was the youngest. At one point, our house had 10 people living in it. And 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of people living in it or something like that. It was my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my aunts, and my mom, and my uncle, and myself.
How did that work?
It was great. You never know there's so many people, except I did, because I'm a super introvert. So I am in this house full of people who are always talking, always energetic, always lively, and I'm just like, I want some quiet in my life. But I was a very happy house for the most part. People were always talking. I always felt comfortable voicing my opinion. When I was growing up, my aunt and my grandmother used to call me Miss Charles because I was very bossy like the Prime Minister. And so I still very much had a voice even in all of the activity and the noise that was happening, but I was sort of more of a quiet soul. My sister, who came right after me, was the opposite of that, and so we were a really interesting pair for a while. My sister is an extrovert and outgoing and have public personality, and I am still today known to many people our age group as Adele's sister.
Oh my.
That's great. That's great. I really enjoyed my household, and I think growing up with so many people around made me really understand the importance of community and having that, and I had that at a very cellular level, because I also come from a very big family on my father's side, and so there are, how many first cousins I have? Maybe around 37, we counted one time.
Wow.
Yeah, so my paternal family is also very large, and we're also very close-knit. I lived very close to my uncle, and we would spend every vacation together. They would see a line of children walking around Mao or walking in Bells or something. So we had a lot of fun together, and it also made me very, very lazy about making friends, because I had so many cousins my age, and we still do that. We still have trouble making friends with other people because we spend all our time together. So,
I would never guess though, Schuyler, seriously, I would never guess. How would you retreat though to that quiet place, that quiet place in such a household filled with so many people?
I read a lot. It's very quiet there. And so that's really where I got this love of literature and reading and picked a career. I've been an avid reader my entire life. I don't remember a time I couldn't read. It's like as long as I have conscious memory, I was reading, and I was reading a lot, and I was reading.
What were you reading?
Everything. I was reading everything. I don't remember spending a lot of time with little children's books. I was very young when I started to read more advanced material, and I remember reading Plato's The Republic at 11 because my uncle had no idea what I was reading. And when I read it again when I was in college, I was like, no one was stopping me from being crazy. No one was making a decision that I should have been doing something else, like climbing a tree. They let me do this.
That's right, playing around.
Who let this happen? I had a lot of questions for the people in my life when I realized what it was that I was doing at that age. But I enjoyed it, and it was a quiet place. But the thing I like about reading the most is that it is listening. You're listening to the lives of other people from places you've never been to. And we're from a small place, and it's a way for me to connect with people I didn't know, and it was a way for me to also get a little bit of quiet in my head, because once I have a book, people stop talking to me, because in our culture we're really supportive, for better or worse. We really push people who are academically inclined, and encourage our children to read and spend a lot of time with their books and so on. And those are great things, but I also learned from that experience that balance matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I used reading a lot of the times as an escape from things that I should have been doing, like chores, or even making friends or being more social at that age. And I eventually would grow out of that, but I certainly know that I used it for good things, and I also used it to hide sometimes when I wanted to escape.
Right.
So it was a really interesting experience, but because of that I devoured everything, and I was really, really highly motivated by the things I was reading at a very young age.
Television?
I watched a lot of TV. It doesn't make any sense, right?
No.
Yeah, but I watched.
I almost thought that reading was all you did.
No, I've been watching a lot of TV for a long time. When I was growing up, I spent a lot of time outside my house. I would go to my grandparents' house in Maho and hang out with my cousins, and secretly try to stay on Maho Road before my grandmother caught us and told us to come upstairs or something. All right, we would do stuff like that. I feel like I had a lot of balanced experiences. I did use reading was my way of really replenishing myself after being in experiences, and I think people confuse that idea of introversion. I always try to correct it. Introversion doesn't mean that you're not a social person. It just means that you need to get away from people because it takes a lot of energy for you to do that, right? So
well, I think generally speaking, that is what we attribute to being an introvert.
Yeah, they think it's somebody who's shy or somebody who's antisocial, but I'm not antisocial.
You're not.
I just need time for myself after every social experience, and I need a lot of time for myself because it takes a lot of energy to interact with people. So I would do those things. I would engage. I have friends I would play dominoes by the mango tree and stuff like that. I did all those things. All the people on the street know me. It's not like I wasn't out there having fun, but I also liked the pleasure of my own company. Mm-hmm. I like to be by myself. I like to do my reading, and I like to watch a lot of TV. There was a point where I remember maybe in early years of high school, I used to watch all the soap operas. I would leave school, get to Maho by 1:30.
So you could catch.
Yeah, but I was doing my homework in school. See, don't do this at home, kids.
Wait.
Do not try this at home.
How did you work that out?
I was doing my homework in other people's class and not getting caught. It was like, I did that for a year.
Oh my God.
To watch soap operas.
So you're talking about Young and the Restless,
Yes,
Bold and the Beautiful.
and I didn't want to watch it when everybody was watching it at 6 o'clock. I had to watch it in the daytime. Because in the evening I had to go read my book because I didn't want to watch it with everybody who was talking while it was on. So I had to watch it uninterrupted in the day. So they had all my children, and I was a big fan of General Hospital at that time. It was my favorite thing.
It's a little hard to believe that you spent all of these hours watching soap operas after school.
After school, because I was home. Sometimes one of my aunts would come home early. There was one auntie Emma would come home early, but she was a teacher. And she would take naps and stuff, so she didn't care what we did. She was the best babysitter because she let us do whatever we want. But most of the time, you come home and you wait until your parents coming home at 4 o'clock, so you have that window of time, to maximize on all the nonsense that you're not supposed to be doing.
Unbelievable.
So I watched TV, but you know what? My work got done, so nobody was watching. Nobody was worried that stuff wasn't getting done, and I always had a very ready argument for anything. Like, oh, your grades are dropping. Like, yeah, you could have really bad kids. So I had a ready response to any possible argument that I should be spending any more time with my books. And so I liked those, and I liked award shows at the time. It was very interesting. So I used to watch a lot of movies. I used to watch a lot of TV. I still watch a lot of TV. I think in the last year, maybe not so much for obvious reasons, but I still like both very, very much.
Do you remember some of the shows you would watch outside of the soap operas?
Oh, they would not appropriate for children. I would watch.
Are you killing me?
My mother goes to bed very early, and so did my grandmother, and those worked out really well for my life. I'm not sorry, so I'm not going to apologize to her because I'm happy I did it. I had a really great life, but she was really lucky that I had a good sense of right and wrong, and I was raised in a good house, and I had a good sense of judgment. So
right.
I didn't get in trouble for it. It's certainly not something I would recommend to some of my students to do. But I would watch, I love HBO. I watched everything on HBO. And Showtime. Everything. So I watched Queer as Folk, I watched The L Word, I was watching Sopranos, I was up all night watching TV. When everybody was sleeping.
You were a bad girl.
I was
very naughty.
But I was at home.
You were at home. That was the most important thing. And you were studying.
I did my work.
And you did your work.
Yes, and I was not getting, and I think this is the myth, because if I had a child like this, I'd be like, what is going on? This is certainly karma. But there are safe spaces. I think every child is not the same. I certainly wouldn't have, like I said, this probably wouldn't have worked with another child. My sister loves outside. She still loves outside. She would come to Dominic at 10 p.m. at night and be like, on a Tuesday night, and be like, let's go get drinks. And it's past my bedtime at that point. She likes outdoors. She likes to be around friends. She's very, very social. I don't like that. I like to be home. And every child, and I think the good thing about my family and my household, and well, both my families actually, because I'm so sort of integrated in both sides of my family like that, I think they allowed us space to be individual people, that I didn't have to do things. My sister would disagree because she would say that they were saying being a child, but that's a lie. She's revising history. But yeah, I think we were allowed a lot of space to be ourselves, and to know where the balance was. Certainly not every child could get away with watching, and I'm sure people in my house knew what I was doing. I don't think that I was so smart and slick that I was getting away with murder, But I was at an age where I was already making those decisions, and I could watch TV. Certainly, I may have wanted to sleep more, but I did get to watch a lot of those programming, and they really helped me. I watched one of the shows that I really liked was The West Wing, and it came on. I watched all seasons of The West Wing. I can probably quote every single episode to this day. But when I went to the school in the United States, it really helped me adjust very quickly, knowing a lot of American history
culture
through the show. And it was just, especially in an American classroom, watching that show really allowed me to adapt and learn elements of American history that would really show up in class. And so TV is not always bad. Like I like TV, I like technology, I use all the things people have. People sort of immediately try to condemn when we have a new technology, but I think there's balance in everything, and there's always something to learn, no matter what your experience is. You just have to know the child you have, and you have to know what the limits are, and treat them accordingly.
Mm-hmm. And talking about children, earlier on you were making a point before I, was just totally blown away with you saying your actual age. You were saying that you're 35 and you don't have kids, and you were trying to say that's why I'm 35 and I don't have kids. What point were you going to make?
I was saying that my parents had children young. Mm-hmm. I am the only child between my parents. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 siblings and some extras. I'm the eldest child, of course. And I watch my parents. My parents are probably, if anybody on the street says anything about me, it's probably that they think I'm a hard worker. And I get that from both my parents. My parents are probably the people I know who have the best work ethic of anybody I know, and hands down. Both of them. That's why it's not very hard for me to do that. But I also know that my parents had to work a lot harder than they would have had to if, let's say, they had started having kids 5 years later. They would have done things for themselves that maybe not, because I don't feel any of us have ever felt like, oh, our parents should have waited or anything like that. I think we just understand how important it is for you to have some of the things that you want for yourself, so that you can share that. And they've done well despite those challenges that come with having children at a certain age and in a certain culture where those things sort of label you early or make things a little more complicated. Not necessarily more difficult, but they certainly make things complicated. So I treat that aspect of my life and my personal life as something that I get to choose, something that I get to do very differently than, let's say, my parents had the opportunities to do when they were in a different environment. And I know all the naysayers out there going to tell me there's never a perfect time to have a child. There's always this.
I know about that too. I think we're on the same wavelength.
But there's also this conversation about the assumption that everyone wants to have children in our culture, or that something is wrong with you if you don't.
Yep.
I certainly want to. I certainly don't feel that, oh, I'm so anti-children or whatever. But I certainly think that those are private decisions, and those are decisions that people should have. We get an opportunity. I certainly have benefited so much from other people's kindness towards me, right? As somebody's child, right? For most of my life, my aunts had 0 children. 2 of them still have no children, and I've been practically raised as their own. Mm-hmm. And so there are ways for you to be involved in caring for children that have nothing to do with childbirth. So we have other options than just that, and I think as a beneficiary of that, I always try to say, well, there are other ways to have children, but when I decide to, I want to make sure that there are certain things about my life that make me stable, that make me feel like myself, and also make me feel like I don't have to necessarily, this is not an either or thing. I am a person, when I move, we all move. My friends are laughing at me now because I have a question about what will happen to my pets in a few weeks or so, and because we move as a family. They go where I go.
You take your pets with you.
Where we go, where they go, I go. Where I go, they must be welcome, or else we're not going. Okay. And that's how we roll. But I have a cat and a dog.
Okay, I have a dog. So that's interesting, especially about the child thing, because people meet me all the time and they say, when are you having a child? Or it's getting to that time and your eggs are getting hard and hard boiled and all of that kinds of stuff, Schuyler.
Oh my God.
People can be like that, but like you said, it's a private thing, and it's a decision that you make when you're ready to make that decision, and it's that simple.
Yeah, and also if the decision gets made for you, that's also your business. It's not I think I spend a lot of my time working with young people, as you know, and one of the conversations that I constantly have in those contexts is about privacy and what it means. We come from a culture, this is not just Dominica, this is a practice coming out of slave culture, where one way we police ourselves or make ourselves stay in check is through gossip or a certain sense of entitlement to other people's business. It doesn't have to be gossip in this negative sense, right? It's just this, we're responsible for each other, we are a community, and therefore we sort of have a right to know what's going on with people, or make it our right to know that, whether we're doing it consciously or not. I know all of us want to get when something is happening, but that's just how we are, and that's okay some of the time. But there is a way that we have to put boundaries around what is our business and what is not our business, and it's also for caring for ourselves. And I don't think it's necessarily, it's also where it's coming from and what the intention is behind these conversations or these queries, because you never know what people's personal experiences are. You never know why this person doesn't have a baby.
Exactly.
Right? And also it's sometimes it's about teaching, especially for me with the young people, it's especially about teaching them that they can protect themselves from that. We live in an internet age. Everybody puts everything on the internet all the time. And I talk to them about this all the time. You have a right to your own privacy. You don't have to give it all away in that space. You don't have to say all your business. You know, you can also keep, and this is not about people, when they hear that, they all say, oh, you're being secretive or whatever. It's not about being a secret. If people talk to me, they will realize I'm an open book. There's nothing, I'm not going around doing things that are criminal, so I don't have anything per se to hide. I just think that there are some things that are private and there are some things that are more open. And when people choose to share them in certain contexts, it's their choice. But they shouldn't be sort of pushed by society to have to do that or have to meet a certain standard, because I can answer people, you know, I'm good at the answering people in the context. But there are some people I work with, for a lot of young people, and some of them do not have that skill, and they internalize that, and then they have their insecurities, and they become confused, and they get depressed, and all of these things happen behind the scenes, and we're walking on the street saying, oh, that girl is this and this girl is that, and we don't know the trauma we're causing to people when we sort of invade their space in that way. And I think it's very important, as much as I can, when I get the opportunity to talk about it, I do talk about that, because we have a right to space, you know. And I know what, for me, is something as benign as I remember writing an article about this, and people getting very, very, people talking to me about it, about respecting, like, when you come to someone's home, or calling before you come, or things like that, you know. Culturally, we tend to do that, and it's not okay for everybody. It doesn't mean that we're becoming American. It's because maybe we're learning a little more, maybe that's okay, you know. Maybe we're learning a little more about how to be sensitive to each other's needs, and maybe we all need to learn that over time, you know. So yeah, the children thing is just a really a bigger example of those things, but they happen all the time in little ways.
And I really like the perspective that you have on this, because I experience that so very often, and I like the way that you put it. It is my private space. Do not invade that private space. Yes. It's that simple. Yeah. Just respect it.
And your body is your private space. Your home is your private space. Your car is your private space.
Correct.
This is your stuff. So you have a right to, and you can share that at your will. If you decide to share it, that's great. And I think I am open to sharing. I share my space with other people all the time in different ways, and I share my time with other people to help them understand those things. But when I do know that I need that time, and I need it for me to be able to take some time in order that I can give more back to society, I do take that very seriously.
Important. Let us talk about education. In terms of a primary school, where was that?
I went to St. Martin Primary School. I did.
That's where we learn to write very well.
Yes, I certainly am an embarrassment to my primary school teachers now, because I got carpal tunnel syndrome in graduate school, and basically kind of write like.
Friendship was just, you know, that's one thing you could come to St. Martin Primary School for. So what was it like there?
School was fun.
All girls.
School was, I mean, I went to all girls schools from St. Martin School, and then to come in high school. So, I mean, the same girls I knew in preschool are the same girls I know now. They're still my friends. A lot of them are. It was fine. I didn't like school because I was really smart, and I was really good at getting away with doing work fast and easy. And it made me...
Because you were bright.
Yeah, but that's not an excuse. You know, I tell that to students all the time now. Discipline is half the work, and I learned that over time. I certainly don't, I'm not trying to be self-deprecating and say I don't work hard. I work really hard. But I certainly knew that there was a period of time that I felt unchallenged in school. But I had really good teachers who identified that I needed that a little extra push. And everybody who comes here who went to St. Martin Primary School will probably talk about Mrs. Morgan. And I remember Mrs. Morvan putting me on a single bench in the corner because I was causing trouble in her class, not knowing how to work well with others and all of this stuff. And the other day I went to her house a couple of years ago and I told her, Miss Morvan, put me in the corner. She said, guess what, you needed that.
You needed that.
I did that.
Yeah. Do you understand now that you needed it?
Oh yes, I know perfectly exactly what. And as a teacher, I would have done the same thing. I'm an educator now. I would have done exactly the same thing. But it was good. I don't have too many horrible memories of school. School was fine. It was a good space for me.
Common entrance.
Oh yeah. I just posted a picture on my Facebook, that horror picture. So I did really well at common entrance. And then I went to hide in my house. I can never forget that. I came first on the list in 1994.
Oh, you did?
I posted a picture on my WhatsApp yesterday with my Coke bottle glasses because yesterday was the 24th anniversary of that newspaper article.
Listen to you. Let me just pause you for a moment. You said, I did well. You're not saying to me that I came first, you just said, I did well.
And so did a lot of other people.
But you were first.
I was first. It wasn't, we all did well. And it was, no one asks you about your common entrance grade when you go to the exam. And I do this a lot. Not because I don't want to say, when I'm among my friends and I'm in school or talking to my students who I work with regularly, I'm academic Beyonce, they know that. I'm the best. But
I like that.
I also like to make this point that we do well. Like there is a community of other people doing well, and the ranking thing, nobody asks you about that when you are interviewing for a job, and nobody asks you about that when they go out in the street and Fredina decides she wants to call you on a show. Fredina didn't know she knew certain things about me and the quality of person I am. And that's why she asked me on the show. She didn't ask me on the show because I was first in common entrance. So for me, that is I played down only for that reason. But yeah, I did well in common entrance. And so I got to go to the school of my choice. I went to common high school.
Oh, when they put you in the corner.
And she knew what she was doing. This lady was she's just amazing. She's the best. She did that for my own good, so that I could stop distracting her students and learn how to play well with others.
You see, you were distracting others while you were on course to get Island Scholar.
I was just not minding my business at the time, and that was a very important lesson I needed to learn. And guess what is the most important lesson I teach my students now? Mind your business.
Mind your business.
And what other people are doing is none of your business. Right? So it was a good time to learn that. And then I went to common high school, and also I had a little, not a rebellious phase. I was just watching too much TV, so I did okay too. And school was good. I liked high school, especially my last few years of high school. The last 2 years were good years. I don't know. When I say I like school, I like the environment and I like the culture. I had a lot of really, really good teachers. And because of that, I was always in a position where I got to express myself or to not feel like the classroom was a place where I couldn't have an opinion, right? I always got to express myself and ask questions in productive ways and didn't feel like I was getting shut down. But I do know that we still have work to do on that in our classrooms in the Caribbean especially. We want to make it a space where students feel that they can contribute more and not just be passive learners in that environment. Because of that, I had a good experience in school, but I also know school wasn't always easy for everybody and not always easy for a lot of my peers. There were many students in my cohort who now have really, really, really successful lives doing things that we would not even have imagined when we were in school, only because they were labeled as a certain type of person or they were seen doing only a certain type of work. And school has changed a lot now. I'm happy to say that there are more options, there are more things for students to do, there's more balance. But those types of labels could have done a lot of damage. And fortunately, I wasn't someone who experienced that, but I know many people I care about did. And so it really taught me a lot of things about what I wanted to do going into this career, although I didn't always know I wanted to be an educator. It really helped me to learn, here's the things that were really great about the experience you had in school. Try to model those. Here are things that you might want to change. Yeah.
What were your main subject areas? What did you like?
Literature.
Yes.
I didn't care much about anything else, to be honest. I want to sit here and tell you all the stories. I was really good at math, and most of my family, especially my maternal grandmother, her family, I come from a family of mathematicians and scientists, and we have a lot of people who, yeah, a lot of math people in my family. And so I did okay at math, but I didn't give it any of my attention. And I think part of it was secretly to be rebellious because, people were expecting things. I had the court of people who was like, you're smart, you can do anything. Why are you doing these books and writing? Why do you want to do that? I had teachers ask me that. I had people in my community ask me that. I could be any type of doctor I wanted to be, and I chose to be a reading doctor. And guess what? It taught me a lot about why people like you behave the way you do.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, but I really like literature. I always wanted to write. I wanted to be a writer, and I always wanted to work in an environment where I could write a lot. And that was one of the reasons I focused on literature. Of course, we did other things, but that was my primary subject. And I also studied both languages when I was in high school.
French and Spanish.
I did French and Spanish in high school because I knew I wanted to work in journalism of some kind. And when I left Dominica to go to school, I actually went to do a journalism degree, which was in the English department at the school I went to. And so I really wanted to do journalism in international politics. That's where I studied. I used to watch Christiane Amanpour a lot on the news,
Gosh.
and I was really obsessed with her. And I also liked politics at the time. I put that caveat out there. I followed politics a lot. I remember getting into a fight with a girl in grade 7.
Fight? Physically?
Well, let's say no. Well, we had a disagreement about it was an election year, and we were having some very strong opinions at 11. Yeah.
At 11 years old?
We were 11 years old, and we were having a very
opposing sides.
Yes. And so I remember that I enjoyed not necessarily just politics, but political history and things like that. I enjoyed them very much, and so I wanted to do that when I went to school. But things change, choices change, so do politics. So I took a different path, but those things are still very important to me. I think everybody in school thought I would be a politician or a lawyer, but no.
Yeah. But no, not in the future.
Not at all.
Not at all.
No.
Politics, no.
There are different ways to do political work than to go into active politics.
I see.
And I do my political work right now, making students read more.
And you're quite comfortable with your PhD in literature.
I would do everything exactly the same way.
But I still think you'd be a very good lawyer. I could see you in court arguing a case.
I would be in contempt daily.
Well, that too. Yeah.
Just no.
There is a show, I think on VT called In Contempt.
I would just not be able to. I don't know. I mean, certainly, I've never seen myself as someone who's been interested in the law. And that's for different reasons. Not that I'm not interested. I'm particularly interested in the law, but I've never wanted to be someone who is an actual practicing lawyer. And it's because of all that excessive reading I used to do. I grew up, especially my father's side of the family, very intellectual, sort of grassroots people, and we had a lot of reading material that was very vast in terms of the political. I remember always seeing, there was a time in my life, I don't know if my father really knows this story, so it'll be interesting. My father used to have a picture of Malcolm X in his room in my grandparents' house, stuck on the wall or something. And my father had a beard at the time, and I thought that was my father in the picture.
You're joking.
I was young, I was a little girl. I didn't know for a long time that they were not the same person, because they had this uncanny resemblance in that particular photo, but it was a picture of Malcolm X. And I grew up in an environment where those types of progressive politics were always part of the conversation, they were always part of our lifestyle. My uncle was in politics for a long time, and my uncle was very active in the anti-colonial movements in the 70s. And they were young people, they were 18 to 25 maybe. And because of that, I understood very young the difference between law and justice. And that sometimes the law is used to create injustice. And so it was something that was never really attractive to me because of that. And that's the other thing people might learn about me. I'm really more radical than I look. Yes. I play a very good conform on TV.
I can believe
But you
that.
can believe it.
I can
Yes.
believe that. I can believe that.
And yeah, so it's never been a profession that has been attractive to me. But I've had other ways to respond to law, to engage with conversations about that in the work that I do, and in the way I've been able to use both my research experience and my teaching, especially in Caribbean studies and post-colonial studies, to make some bridge between law and justice.
So you graduated from Convent High School.
I did.
I suspect with some very good grades too.
They were okay.
They were okay.
Yes, they could have been better, but you know what? They were good. They were pretty good.
You see, at this point, I'm not sure what to.
They were good. They were
what
good.
to
They were
make.
good. I still have my 4 and 5 report card. They were solid.
They were solid.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take it. We'll take it at that. All right, and then what? What happened after that? What at the end of fifth form? What was in the mind?
I
What
just
was
wanted
the
to
thinking?
go. I wanted to get out of here. I don't know why. I mean, I remember why. I think it's all the TV I was watching, to be honest. But also, I knew I wanted to do this type of work, and I was already starting to get, parents. This wasn't my parents, certainly. For better or worse, this was not my parents who had this pressure to tell you what your future was going to look like. And I was hearing a lot of conversation about everybody planning their futures, and we were in fourth form, and everybody had to decide on it was very strict rules. It's still like that. And people were having a lot of conversation about what would happen next in their life, planning to go to school and all those things. I was very, very much committed to that. I was getting ready to go to university when I was in high school, but I knew that the types of environments at that time, it was still Clifton Dipping Community College. I was going to go there, I got a scholarship to go there, and I was going to study things. But none of these things I really, except for literature, were meaningful to me, and the particular type of curriculum that was there was starting to make me feel disconnected from learning, to be honest. And it was only A levels at that time, so you didn't have many options of what you got to take, and you had to stick with your 2 or 3 subjects.
Sociology, economics, chemistry,
economics, literature, and
etc.
sociology.
Yes.
And so I stayed there for a while, but while I was doing that, I was really planning what comes next. And I had, again, because I am not a first of anything in my family. I come from educated and intellectual people. I have many people in my family who had gone to college before. My aunts had already migrated to the US. So I had a lot of information and a lot of access, and I guess in that case, privilege to know how to make different choices compared to maybe what some of my peers had. So I knew I was trying to get to the US and trying to go to school to study the thing I wanted to do, because I didn't have that there. So I stayed in Dominica for a year.
And the thing at the time was?
The journalism.
Journalism.
Yeah. I always knew that I was going to, secretly, I always kind of knew I wanted to kind of not really do journalism forever. But I had to, journalism was a nice balance. I couldn't go anywhere and tell anybody, give me a loan to go to school to be a writer. It's still hard to do that now, So I created this entire plan on what I needed to do, and I spent my 17th year planning exactly how I was going to make the Great Escape. And I did everything. I asked my father for money for me to register for the SATs. I did that. I studied with my friends. There were a bunch of us taking it at that time, and so after we went to school, we studied for the SATs.
Here?
Yes, we did it here. And then I got my grades. I applied to schools. I got into schools, and I did all. And then I told my parents, "Oh, I got into some schools. I have to go." I did everything. I did all my stuff, and they kind of knew that it was the time to kind of make or break Schuyler, because she cannot be contained at this time. So it was either we help her do this, or...
How old were you?
I was 17. Yeah. So
you were ready to go.
I was ready. I'm not going in the bad sense. I did feel like, okay, I'm over this space. It's kind of small. But I did most of the stuff by myself until I got to the point where, we have to have this conversation with your parents to finance it and so on. And I mean, I remember my family, my parents facing some objection or some concerns that I was young and I was going to go away and I should work for a while and I should do all of those things. And they committed to this decision. And my entire family committed to this decision, and we made it happen. So, and we had the help of I probably won't say their name because I don't know if they would like to be named, but we had the help of some of my father's friends who in bureaucracy got in the way, were very helpful in making us get to that final stage of me going away to school. And then as soon as I got there, I met this nice lady in my class. She was my literature teacher, the first literature teacher I had in school, and she was this very nice old lady, and I was in class and talking to her, and it turns out she was on the board of trustees, and she gave me a full ride to school a presidential scholarship to Brooklyn College at the time. It was in my first semester while I was there.
Wow.
So she was a very good teacher, I remember that a lot.
So by the time you got into school, you were 18 by then?
I had turned 18.
Yeah, turned
18 in the Dominica in September, and I left in December to go to school.
So what is the time period from the time you graduated?
It was a year and more. I went to
stayed a year.
for a year.
Okay.
Yeah. And there in the.
Oh yes, you said you did chemistry, literature, and
no chemistry. No.
Sorry,
no,
literature.
No. Literature, economics, and sociology.
Okay.
Chemistry is like a foreign language.
Okay.
So yeah, I did those. I stayed for a year, and then in the first term of the second year, I left.
You left.
Yeah. So I was 18 at that time, and.
What do you think, though? Not to interject. What do you think impressed this teacher, this professor, to assist you in getting that scholarship? What impact you think what impression you think you made?
Wow, that's a long time ago. I don't know. I would speak to her a lot. I mean, I was very committed to doing my work at all times. Because I enjoyed that class, I was very, very disciplined about my work, but I was also very vocal in class. I had an opinion about things, and I noticed both from my experience as a student and from my experience as a professor in the US, that sometimes when students come to the US from foreign places, they have a hard time being vocal in spaces where people might hear the accent, or people might, they might not be familiar with the environment and so on. And it takes a little time for them to adjust and get comfortable, and then maybe start participating in class and maybe doing those things. And I was really I never had that fear of the classroom, because in the classroom space, I guess I always know what my role is. So it was very easy for me to adapt, and I think that was one of the reasons why she and I ended up having this relationship. She was a very good mentor to me for the most time I was in college. I had a good experience there.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a break for a moment, and we're coming right back. This conversation is moving along so nicely that I'm only now realizing I'm not taking a break as yet. It is 5 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. This is the In the Spotlight radio show. I really want to thank everyone who's tuned into the program at this time, in whatever part of the world you are at this moment, either listening via Q95 FM or rather viewing, whether viewing via my Facebook page at this time for Dinah Frampton. For those of you who would like to view, we thank you for choosing us tonight and for sticking with us throughout the course of the 2 hours for the schedule for the In the Spotlight radio show. We're coming right back. Keep it locked right here on Q95 FM radio. This is the In the Spotlight radio show.
In the Spotlight on Q95.
You're so fluent and
everybody.
oh my God. What?
Of Dominican life.
You are awesome, trust me.
Their triumphs and tragedies.
But have you gotten comfortable? I know they can still hear us, don't worry. Have you gotten comfortable now?
Touching the behind of people in politics.
Hi, Rodney.
Sports, business,
Yes, she's what she's doing.
And more. Getting to know our farmers,
And
public
Kumail.
servants, youth, the ordinary Dominican.
Quite a few
Listen
people
to
are
their
here.
stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred.
Nah, right.
Spotlight.
Aren't easy, of course.
Yes, he is.
Oh, hi, Rodney, my schoolmate. Ivani, Esprit, yes. Ivani and I went to grammar school together.
Every
Yes.
Monday night from 8 p.m.
Yes, Mary is my cousin. My grandmother is a Murphy.
Your grandmother is a Murphy? Oh, but I wanted to kind of ask about them though.
Yeah.
We didn't get around to that in terms of, you know, your, because you refer to your mother, your father, etc. But we didn't really say, you know, what their kind of background is. So we can still do that quickly. It's always important. Brilliant individual, amazing job. Oh. All right, we're back. I was just saying to Schuyler here during the short break that we took, because we have so much to talk about. I really do not want the time to just go flying from us tonight. That although we spoke a bit about her background, we'll come back to her education in just a while, but we didn't speak much about who exactly are your parents, your mother, your father, and their backgrounds. Let's start with mommy.
My mom is Deborah Blanford, the church people know her. My mother's Children's Church. That's her.
I know your mommy.
You got the dynasty.
Oh my goodness. Go on.
Yeah, so my mom is from Maho, and my mom's father's family is from Marriott. Yes. And my mom is from Maho. My grandmother is from Maho.
Okay.
My third parent. My grandmother is.
What's your dad's name?
My dad is Martin Esprit.
Martin
He's
Esprit.
the last son of us and Esprit. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, is, well, she was a nurse in the community, and my grandmother is also very, she was the second of 7 children, and she is also the first daughter. I'm the first daughter of a first daughter of a first daughter. So that, yes. So, but she, as the first daughter in her family, my grandmother had to make a lot of sacrifices that were really impressive to me, but sometimes makes me really committed again to this idea of what is justice in our society. I learned a lot because she was probably the most consistent parent in my life in all this time. I learned a lot about her, about what I want to be as a woman, but also what I shouldn't have to be made to be. And I very, very rarely talk about my grandmother in any type of context because it's probably the most personal and intimate relationship I've ever had in my life. But I do think that her story is a really important one for us, for women in a place like Dominica. She had to make a lot of sacrifices, and her siblings, again, some of these very, very smart people I was talking about are the Murphys. So my grandmother is a Murphy, and her brother, one of her brothers was a very, very famous math teacher here, and he went on to the US to be a math teacher too. My other uncle was the chief statistician at some point. One of my cousins got the Island Scholar in like physics or something. So like, really smart people. And all again, because of this family, I'm not the first in my family to have a PhD. There are a bunch of them.
Okay.
So I'm coming from this heritage, but my grandmother didn't have that type of story. And it's because she was taking care of everybody else. And so she was a nurse, she was a teacher before that. A lot of people in Maho know her as Teacher Mary, or they know her as Nurse Murphy. She worked in the Massac community for a long time, so I know a lot of people in Massac because I spent a lot of time. A lot of days when I was sick and I didn't go to school, I was probably at the health center.
You're truly sick?
Sometimes.
Okay.
And sometimes it was days off, and some days I just wanted to be sick. But
I love your honesty so much. It's not funny.
yeah, I mean, what are they gonna do now?
I know, right?
Yes,
Did you?
like, no. But yeah, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. I spent a lot of time with her while she was working. I went on home visits with her. I did a lot of things with her that showed about how she understood care for people, and how caring for people also comes at an emotional cost. It comes at a cost to you, no matter what type of profession it is. And that's why I work in a service profession. I work as an educator. I work as a teacher in Dominica. Despite people don't like when I call myself a teacher, but I am that. And the emotional work it takes to do that kind of work is often not recognized and acknowledged enough for professions where people make that sacrifice, especially when the people making the sacrifice are women.
I'm going to tell you something. Just today, somebody said to me, and it's sad when people say, and I'm not sure how you will take it, but the person said, people like Dr. Esprit does not belong in Dominica.
Oh, we don't get to that.
Yeah, that was said.
It's sad. I mean, a lot of we'll get back to that later.
Yes,
I just want to comment on that
we
at
will.
some point.
But let's continue about grandma.
Yeah, but my grandmother was an example of that. And she was a single parent, and also being a single parent of 5 kids, helping to raise your siblings' kids, means that you don't get a lot of adults. There were a lot of them.
No personal time.
You don't. And my grandmother, at one point, I remember someone in my family, one of my aunts probably telling me that one of my aunts used to do my hair really, really well. Auntie Raisin and I used to like her to do my hair better than all the other people because she would do everyone's hair, and so she had a lot of practice, and she was a young person, right? But because my grandmother was working a night shift and then she had to come home and get her children ready to go to school, and all these things that meant that she didn't have time for self-care. And I think my grandma, she didn't die because of that, but she died relatively young. More than 10 years ago. It seems like yesterday, but it's been a while. So, but in the time she had, I don't know if she got much time until her retirement to really know what it was like to be herself and with herself, because she's made so many sacrifices for other people, and it's not a sacrifice.
But you say it a bit painfully though, Schuyler.
No, I mean, I would have liked my grandmother to have nice things. I feel I say it painfully because I would like my grandmother to be right here.
Okay.
It's not because I feel so. I don't think my grandmother was they called her name was Mary, and so they would call her Mary or Perpetual Sufferer, because she was a saint, unnecessarily so. And I felt like I wanted her to be a little more like me, like a little more spunky, a little more badass about things. Can I say badass?
You can. Yes, you can, of course.
That's the other part of me we'll not talk about. I felt like she deserved to be to have nice things all the time. And because she worked hard for it, but it was sort of we were not in a different time and place.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I get the opportunity in this different time and place to have a different life than she had, to make different choices, to have better opportunities available to me, because I'm a woman, or maybe despite being a woman, I think it's very important for me to take advantage of those things and to enjoy nice things too, right? So I learned those things from her because she was very happy to do those things. She would do them again if you asked her. And I feel the same way when I participate in any kind of work that is service work with my students, work with community, whatever. I always feel that way, but because I know her story, I always make time to put that boundary in place and say, there is a line and there is time to make space for yourself. So yeah, and and it's not too different on my paternal family side. My paternal grandparents, my grandmother was a jolly from somewhere, the Point Michel side, I believe. I'm really embarrassing the Esprit right now because we are very big on family trees and I'm supposed to know the whole story. So my grandfather is from Campbell, and he grew up there and moved to Maho, and then they left and they went somewhere far away, like Curacao or something. They had some babies there and came back. They bought some land in Bells and started planting citrus and bananas and sent all these children to school on that. Wow. And it worked out really well. But I always saw my grandmother working. My grandmother was always working. She was
That
always,
same grandmother?
No, my paternal grandmother.
Your paternal
Yeah,
grandmother.
and I have these 2 women in my life who are very, very different people, very different personalities. But always working all the time, always being my paternal milestone, my paternal grandmother. She was the shrewdest person you could find. She was managing everything. Everybody thought she was a little mean and whatever, but she was handling business all the time. And I think back on it, I'm like, well, maybe she had maybe something else was going on there, because my grandfather always used to tell us, when we would ask him to do stuff that would not make sense, he didn't want to get in trouble, so he used to tell us, ask mom. So he was trying to stay clear of problems for his own life. This was it's a running joke in our family. So he never wanted to give his permission on something he might get in trouble for. So we really understood very young who was really running the show.
Who was in charge?
But my grandparents were married for maybe 51 years before my grandfather passed away. And I remember one day, I was maybe 15 years old when that happened. I was with my grandmother, and she said, we were sitting at a dining table, and she's like, oh, I wonder if he had lunch today. And it was just like, she was still trying to feed this man. He'd been dead for like a few months.
Serious?
But it was a moment for me where you spend your whole life with a person, you do everything in sync with the person. They build an entire life together, they build an entire business together, they've employed people together. She's been doing this work for so long, and then there's this moment where she's like, oh well, I'm supposed to cook now to give him food, and I wonder if he has lunch. And it's like, oh well, and they were already married for 51 years. My grandfather was already, I think, in his 80s when he passed away. So, but these women they are very, really positive stories for me about what being a woman in a society like this means. Because despite the fact that, they worked all the time, they cared for us. My grandparents were both very caring people. A lot of people don't know this, especially about my paternal grandmother, because she was so introverted. But my grandmother would take her time and sit. There would be a line of girls in the house, and she would take her time and polish our hair one by one when we were with her in the summertime, at least once every other week.
Wow.
Every one of us, right? People don't know this side of her because this was very nurturing, very home, very intimate side. We were very well cared for. And I felt very cared for with both my grandmothers. So I try to always understand that care as part of people think like giving people food and making sure they have an education and sending them to school. All those things happen, but it's these smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
I think we discount the intangible moments of care. The type of life we live. Everybody's struggling, everybody's like hard, people have to work a lot, they come home, they're tired and all of these things, but those little moments are really, really impactful, and we had a lot of that. And I think even in watching us grow up, the next generation of people on both sides of my family, I think we all have these conversations more. My cousins and I talk about this all the time. We're more affectionate with each other than I would see in other places, because we grew up in a home that allowed for softness with each other, both boys and girls. And we saw that modeled for us. So that was very important for us to be around them.
Is both of them passed?
Yes, I have one living grandparent now.
Only one?
Only one. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, and he's in Canada.
I remember you mentioned earlier that your maternal grandmother and you had a really special bond. You said she may have passed over 10 years ago. Do you remember what that was like for you? Considering you had such a...
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's, I made notes for Diana because I'm me. So before I came here, I made notes about all the things Diana might ask me about that would make me feel a little so and how I'm going to respond to them.
Oh my.
Because I am a scholar, I study. So I prepared for this just like everything else. I was ready for it. When my grandmother died, I was finishing, actually it was the day before I was supposed to turn in my master's thesis. I can never forget where I was or what I was doing. It was the day my sister called, and I knew why she was calling in that moment, because my grandmother had been sick for 2 weeks. It wasn't that long. Everything happened kind of fast. And I won't really talk about that day, but I will talk about what happened after that. I turned in my master's thesis, I got my degree, I went to another school to do my PhD, I moved. And then I was a shell of a person for a good 4 years. And I say this in hindsight now because I was living my life, doing regular things, going to school, doing really well at school, putting all my attention in that, and being very, very focused. I was really, when I got into the PhD program, I was advancing very, very quickly and doing very well. And then I think over time, I don't remember if a single specific thing happened. There were some things that had happened that I don't necessarily want to talk about, but they were not very bad things, but they were challenges that I was facing in my life personally that I was having trouble coping with at the time. And so I was spending time with people who did not make me feel good about myself. I was making choices to have relationships with people, friendships, whatever it was, that were not reciprocal because I was in a different place and whatever. And these were things that I wasn't really conscious of at the time. And then it got to a point where I was watching a lot of TV. And it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. And I just kept watching TV. And it was at the stage in my academic career where I was also, because I had advanced so far, I started writing my dissertation very early, so I was no longer in classes and I had a lot more time. And then I watched Minds. Trust me.
Criminal Minds.
Criminal Minds. And then one day I woke up and I went to the health center and I signed up for therapy. And I remember, I wrote about this before, that's the only reason I'm talking about it, because I'm not, I have business from it. And I said, you know, my grandmother died, to the lady. She's still my favorite, everyone knows my therapist. Shout out to Nancy. My therapist is like a third arm. She walks around with me. I talk about her all the time. I said, my grandmother died, and she's like, oh, your grandmother died today? I'm like, no, my grandmother died 4 years ago. She died 4 years ago, and I'm here. And something happened that really made me look at my life. I'm like, I didn't actually grieve about this. This happened, and I went on with my life, and I did what everybody thought was the appropriate thing for me to do. And there's also this sort of pressure. You know, my grandma and I were super close. We shared a lot. We talked almost very, very frequently. In that time, you had calling cards, and I would spend all my money talking to her and asking her why she chose to stay in Dominica when she can just come here and cook me food and things like that. And she was just happy being home and talking to neighbors and all of that. And I went to therapy to deal with my grief. And I cannot...
4 years later.
4 years later. I was kind of busy. But I will never be that busy again.
No, you should not.
And I say this because there were a lot of things that happened, and I think for me, one of the reasons why it was very hard for me to know how to grieve is because I'm a very... Despite what I make this effort, I tell my students all the time in a joke, you know, crying is cancelled. We don't do that. It's a joke. They know that. But I'm very much an empath. I absorb all other people's emotions around me, and that's why a lot of the reason why I need to clock out sometimes. And I was just taking in what everybody else was going through and dealing with them and being the strong one for everybody else. I also had a moment where I was like, I don't want to be so sad that my grandmother died, that my mom feels bad, because I like my mother. You know, and I had this whole conversation with myself. I talked to my friends about it at school, because I had most of my friends at that time that I was with every day had no idea what my family dynamics were or whatever. One of my closest friends to this day is someone I met in my graduate school program, and she's African American, and so we would talk all the time about it. And I remember taking a class in grad school when I got there and writing this 30-page essay about the funeral. And yes, it even got it recommended for publication and all of those things. It was about my grandmother. And I did all of these things very intellectually. I had this conversation with myself in a very sterile academic way. I talked to my friends, what does it mean for my grandmother to die and for me to do all of this nonsense. And I wasn't dealing with myself, right?
Please do not take it personally, but it almost sounded like you were...
Well, this is why I'm having this conversation. This is why I wanted to use this platform to talk about this. I think in our culture, we tell ourselves so many things about how we are supposed to behave.
Yes.
And I don't even think in my own life or in my own personal experience that I was hearing it at my house, that people were telling me, oh, you need to be strong or whatever.
Yes.
But the social construction around people policing your behavior. It's the same thing we're talking about. How are you supposed to grieve? What your grandmother would want? You don't know what my grandmother wants. You don't know her. She's dead. So she doesn't want anything right now but to rest in peace, right? So for me, I had to release this sense that I was performing how to be a good granddaughter who was grieving for her. And a lot of this was absorbed from how we behave culturally. I remember coming to Dominica after that, and everybody would see me looking all sad and saying, oh, my grandmother would be so proud. Of course, she was proud before she died. So I had to take out some of that pressure on myself. But mental health doesn't have to be about craziness. It has to be about taking care of yourself. It shouldn't take you to that point. It should be that something happened to me. I don't have to be anything for anybody else. I have to take care of myself right now. And here are the things I need to take care of myself. Maybe I need to talk to someone to do that. That's all it means. right? It doesn't mean that, oh, you are not going to pray, you are not going to get the help from your friends, you are not going to be a positive person. It simply means that you need right now to get some care from someone who is completely disconnected from this issue so they can help you with mechanism to deal with your life. And especially when you're young, I was, 24 when my grandmother died. The 20s are already a hard place to be. I'm in graduate school. Graduate school is hard. I am in a classroom where I am still 5% of the minority population. I am doing an advanced degree that requires all my time and attention. I have to read 900 pages a week. I don't have time to be sad, right? I tell myself that, but then it comes to a point where it catches up with you.
And it caught up with you 4 years later.
And it caught up with me 4 years later, but and since that time, I've been really insistent about people checking themselves and taking care of themselves and giving themselves what they need in order for them to move to the whatever the next thing you do is. You need to be able to get there in a place of clarity. You need to be able to make good decisions and make them with a clear mind when you're doing that, because at some point they're going to catch up with you.
How long did it take you to deal with what you were supposed to deal with 4 years earlier?
I think therapy is one of those things I got to really like reading and TV. So therapy is a constant part of my life. But that particular experience, I went to therapy for about a year and a half.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, but I liked it. It was fixing all other things. You know, you think you're fine and you think you're perfectly normal, and then things come up, and it's not necessarily that things are wrong in your life or that, like I just told you, and this is after therapy. I'm telling you, I had a really good life. I had a really good childhood. I didn't have bad traumatic things happen to me. Certainly, we could have made different choices at some point, all of us. But I was taken care of. I didn't grow up in an environment where it required me to go and cry over all the trauma that happened to me. That wasn't the kind of experience it was. It was simply a practice, a part of my lifestyle that was about making time for myself and my emotional needs. So I got used to it. I got to like it, and so I continue to use it even for things that were not as big as my grandmother dying.
So what is the message out of all of this?
I think the message is that I want us as a society to be more in tune to our emotional and psychological needs and to ask for what we need. I also think that the people who have the ability to do so should take that more seriously. Especially because for me, the message here is, especially to the parents of the young people I work with generally. I spend a lot of time with late adolescents. It's a very confusing time for them. And they have trouble knowing how to ask for what they need. And so it's very important for us to pay attention to the non-verbal cues. I was at an age when I finally realized it that I was in an environment where I could know what something was wrong and I needed to take care of it. But not everybody has that. At the time, not everybody has a skill set, and not everybody is at that emotional place. Some people are still growing up, and we always brush it up, oh, you're just moody or whatever. Everybody knew I was a sourpuss, but it was a different type of feeling, right? So we have to pay attention to the people in our lives and make sure that they are actually okay, and make sure that it's not just, oh, they're having a bad day, or they just need to be positive about the situation or whatever. And I know we come from a very Christian country where praying is one way to deal with that, but it's not the only way. You can have other things as well. I think it's very important no matter how many times, I know we've been doing better as a country the last few years. We're promoting mental health awareness and so on, but it doesn't have to take a big thing. And I was in an environment, I was in very liberal, very fancy schools that gave me health insurance that made it possible for me to not have to pay a lot of money for this care, but mental health care is expensive sometimes. And so it's something that as a country, I think we need to have more access to. I don't think there are nearly enough counselors in school, there are nearly enough therapists, people studying this, coming back home to work for various reasons. But I think it's an area that definitely needs a little more investment, and I think people, need to be honest with themselves about what they need, and don't treat that type of environment, that type of care as something that is labeled for crazy people. Because there's nothing crazy about having a really hard time and having somebody you really, really love die, right? That's something traumatic that happens to you in whatever form. I mean, look at us after Maria. I would like to say that a lot of us still need some therapy, or
I think so
or
too.
should. So it's just a way to give yourself an opportunity to deal with things that happen to you, to help you to manage your life better in the face of difficult circumstances. That's all it is, and it might just mean you need to talk to someone about your day, and that has nothing to do with your life, no repercussions for you, and will let you see the situation for what it is, right? So that's all.
I'm really, really happy you touched on that in particular, especially when you made the point about going to the therapist 4 years later, but to deal with the death of your grandmother who you were close to. But guess what? You said you went for a year and a half because there were other things that probably needed some attention.
There are always other things for it. What does that say about me? I don't know how to advocate for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might be, I have a professor who is giving me a really hard time because he or she thinks I should do something this way, and I think it's really because I'm black. Those types of conversations. You need to have a space where, and it's not to say, oh, that person's going to give you step 1, step 2. It's but that person is probably just going to ask you some questions to help you think through, well, what part of the situation is a real problem? What part of the situation is something that I can fix myself? And it helps me. What therapy does, I also find, it helps you with accountability. Sometimes you are the problem.
Yes.
Sometimes you have things in yourself that you need to fix. Sometimes you need to grow up. There are things that you need to work on in yourself. And I find it really helps with that, shining that light on you and the choices you make. And sometimes we make really bad choices. I've made a few. So those things, it's just a space to help you with that self-reflection. And one thing I don't like is people who say, but that's just how I am.
Yeah.
Or you should accept, yes, everyone at their core. I'm the same person I was when I'm still little brown people with the big glasses. Right?
Oh, you still have big glasses.
Oh my God, yes, I will give you the picture. I am proud of them now. But I also have grown in different ways. There are places for you to change. So step into how is that working out for you? Being like that and just not doing anything else. How is that working out? Has your life changed? Has it improved your circumstances? Has it helped you to be a better person to your friends or to your family? No, you're still having the same fights. You're still having the same problems. You're still mad at everything. Why? There's a place for that. There's a place for you to look at this and say, well, maybe if I change one little action, not a big thing, start with a small thing. And I just think therapy is a good, organized, formal space for that, but it doesn't have to be like that. We can do our own self-reflection in other ways, but it's also something I think that is really, really important to help us start the process.
Okay. Back to Brooklyn College. So you went to Brooklyn College.
I did.
Completed there, and then you went on to do your master's.
I went to do my master's. I went to the University of Virginia.
Scholarship?
I did get scholarship.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course you did.
Well, I did because I went on Google and found things. So I decided to tell people. I was valedictorian at Brooklyn College when I graduated that year in 2004.
I did not read up on that part.
I don't know what you have on that paper you have in front of you, so
I left the other paper.
Because you just pulling out things and then saying I'm downplaying them, so I'm just gonna put it up.
So you were valedictorian
I was in that year.
Wow.
In 2004, I had a really good time in college. I had a really good experience.
I'm quite impressed, Dr. Esprit. I'm just saying.
I was just having fun.
Both the good and bad. Both the good and bad, though. That's the thing. It's like your bad was a kind of good. I don't know if that makes sense.
It was the best kind. I didn't get into much trouble for being bad. It's a safe bad. I like it.
Being up watching shows on an HBO.
Yes. And so that because it was in Brooklyn College that I really got into research careers and learned more about what it meant to go get a PhD and what I could do with it. I still do all of my writing at the same time because a large part of the work we do is in writing and publishing. And so that's when I applied for graduate programs and I went on to study English at the University of Virginia. That was a culture shock, if I ever had one.
Yeah.
I was in Brooklyn. I was home. I lived at home for a while when I say home with my aunt, so I grew up with in Brooklyn, and I had Dominican people around, and I was at a school that had a very West Indian population. It was very, very diverse. It was New York City. I think the most memorable thing about, I had a really good time. It was really where I figured out who I was and what I wanted to do. I was around good people, and I was around students who I was learning a lot from. So it was very both challenging but also new experience. And if people can afford it, I always recommend going to school in a big city. It's very expensive now compared to when I went to school. But there's so much culture in New York that you could do so much things and learn. A lot of our classes were tied to activities in the city, so it was a very good experience. And then I went to Virginia, and the University of Virginia is the university founded by Thomas Jefferson, founding father of the United States, also slave owner. And you know about
you just putting that bit in there.
Just a little bit. And you know, my students really laugh when I tell this story, but you know, Thomas Jefferson was the jerk of slavery. My students who are listening will get the reference because he's all feelings and feeling sad about all the bad things he's doing, but not changing his behavior. You know, and the school was a perfect example of that. It was how, you know, the school was, I got a large award from the school being recruited under diversity. So they paid for all the nice things. I had a lot of good stuff when I was there, but the environment was very different. It was a cross between being hyper visible, where everyone knows that they're looking for something. You're the black person. I remember being one black person in a class of about 20-something students at the time. It was a place I really learned and got the opportunity to study a lot about race in the United States, but also race as a concept around the world and how it manifested differently in different parts of the world. And I'm very grateful for that lesson for different reasons, but it was also a very challenging space for me to continue to learn, because I felt that the things that I was interested in studying, the things that mattered to me as a Caribbean person and to the work I wanted to do in Caribbean studies it wasn't the right fit for that. And so then I applied again, because I'd already gotten in before, to University of Maryland, and I reapplied to join the program at the University of Maryland. And I had a wonderful experience.
So you left Virginia,
And then I went to University of Maryland.
because you just...
I wouldn't say I learned a lot. It was one of the most academically challenging places I've ever been. And I was really happy to be in an environment where the intellectual rigor was really, really high. And I had to sort of make sure I was meeting it. I have never sort of been in a place where I was studying all the time. I also had a lot of fun. Yeah? The black people who were in graduate programs there, we all knew each other, and we had a little clique, and we hung out together. And I went to the club Thursday to Sunday. I did all the things already. So I was at the club Thursday to Sunday and reading 900 pages a week, Monday to Thursday. Well, we had a system going. It was very, very organized. So we studied hard and then we partied hard, right? But because of that, a lot of the people I met here are still some of my very good friends, because we had to be there for each other in certain circumstances. But I knew ultimately the decision to take my master's and go to another school was really about the kind of the work I wanted to do professionally. It was just not the ideal school for that. And you'll find in graduate programs, especially in PhD programs, they can be highly specialized. So some schools are good at some things, and some schools are good at other types of specialties. And so that was one of the major reasons to go somewhere else.
Okay, so you landed at...
University of Maryland.
And that's where you did your PhD?
That's where I did my PhD.
And that was it for education after that?
I'm learning every day.
You're learning every day, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I was done. I finished my PhD at 29. And
Okay.
Everything else is extra. I've done all the things that I've checked off. I'm going to, you know what school did for me too, in all my degrees, it allowed me to travel a lot. I did a lot of travel during school, a lot of study abroad, a lot of different programs. And so I got to check off a lot of things of my sort of life bucket list at a very, very young age.
Good.
And so...
Things like what? Just tell us a couple.
Well, it was a good one or a bad one.
Your bads are not really bad.
This one is pretty bad for my audience.
Oh my goodness.
I stopped going to church after I went to Europe. For different reasons. But, yeah. I went to Europe and saw the gold in Italy. I saw a lot of things. I had a very good study abroad trip. I went to France and I got to meet a lot of people. I lived in a dorm house with 7 other people from all over the world. That was a really fun time. We didn't do much sleeping. But I got to learn a lot. That's where I learned that there are a lot of Somali people in Sweden. Who would know that? I have a Somali friend who is from Sweden. And
interesting.
Yes, there's a large Somali population in Scandinavia. And yes, and we traveled a lot around Europe during that time. What else did I do? I don't know what else is good.
Okay, you
I'm
didn't.
teaching-
You
I'm
you
teaching
did.
13.
You didn't imagine that I would ask you about the bucket
No.
list.
But I had fun.
You had fun.
I had fun.
All right. So, in the midst of all of this, at some point, you did some teaching.
Yes, part of our graduate programs usually involve teaching, and so we are training to be professors at the time. So I've been teaching at university level since 2005. So it's been a while. Yeah, I taught at the University of Virginia for a year, and then when I went to the University of Maryland, I taught there a lot, and then I went to work in DC.
You worked. What kind of work did you do?
I worked as a professor at Trinity Washington University in DC. It used to be Trinity College. It's the sister school to Catholic University. So I ended up at a Catholic women's school again at Trinity. And I worked there for 3 years before I moved back to Dominica.
Okay, so that brings us now to ask, why did you at this time? I think, in my view, from what I've heard, that you were doing pretty okay out there. You were doing pretty okay out there. But then you decided you were going to come back home. Why?
You know, I don't know the why that is the public answer. I just knew I wanted to come home. That was the whole feel. And I hadn't spent a lot of time in Dominica. I wasn't visiting Dominica. I wasn't like the children who come home every holiday. I saw Dominica already. I was going to see the world. I was going everywhere else. So it wasn't like I was spending a lot of time back home. But I kept getting this homesickness that was coming out of nowhere. But I also, because like I said, my specialty in my PhD studies is Caribbean studies. I spend a lot of time working on doing research on Caribbean literature, Caribbean culture, and Caribbean history. And so a lot of the work I do teaches me a lot about who we are as a people and how we can be better in the future, right? And it was very hard to do that kind of work, but for it to be taken seriously if I was sitting outside of the Caribbean doing it. Not that it's impossible. I have a lot of friends who are Caribbeanists living in the US. We work together, we collaborate quite a bit. But there was the particular type of work I wanted to do, again, it was really justice related. It's like, how can I be sitting at a university teaching white children, or maybe African American children, or maybe some Caribbean children, and maybe my classroom will have 2 or 3 a semester, about the Caribbean, and the Caribbean needs people to do this. And I can also do better work for my career right here in the Caribbean because I have more access to it. So it wasn't all this humanitarian servicing. It was really a professional decision as well. It was career driven. I felt that I could advance my career in Caribbean studies by doing more foundational work in the Caribbean, and that was one of the driving decisions. I didn't know at the time exactly what that would look like. I think I would be doing a lot more writing and a lot more publishing and a lot more teaching than I do now. But I certainly knew that I wanted the work that I did to be impactful and not just sort of intellectual. People have this perception of professors and of academia sort of being disconnected from real life. They always talk about school and real life as if we are not people who live real lives and have real problems and have real families and community. And I wanted to bring that closer together, especially because I think I'm not studying something that is so foreign. And like, this is here now, and the Caribbean is a very, very young society, and there's a lot of work to do in our development in different ways. And a lot of people try to tie our development again to political and economic solely, and they underplay the impact of cultural development on a society. And if you go to any major part of the world, I've traveled the world enough to see how much a culture, who a people are, is shaped by their culture and their history. And I think I wanted to give a little more attention to that. So that's the professional reason I came home. But also the United States is an interesting place to live. I had a lot of experiences. One of my secondary areas of study was African American studies. And I spent quite a lot of time studying that and understanding sort of the relationships between the Caribbean history and African American history. And it made me feel a lot like, well, there was an opportunity for me to be home when I don't have to be in a place. I kept looking at the experiences and the history of African Americans in the context that I was learning, and realizing how wild it is that we are from a place where Black people rule themselves and always feel like them the first time. You know, in a modern society, not in the colonial moment. How crazy is that we've managed to pull this off? Because there is still a whole life happening in the United States where people wake up every day and don't feel like themselves in the place that they call home. And and I also make this joke with my friends at school. They're like, you always telling somebody off, you always talking to white people like you don't care about it. I'm like, because I come from a place where black people rule themselves. We just tell people what it is. And so it was a certain type of a little joke that we made all the time when we were in grad school with my African American friends, because they felt like I was just saying things, and I was like, well, I'm sorry that you don't say things, but once I learned more about why and about the history of that shape, that type of internalizing, being a second-class person in your home, I really felt it was more important for us to protect the sovereignty that we did have in a lot of ways. And I can't go change governments, and I don't want to do any of that, like I said. But I can talk to young people about how they make better decisions. I can make sure that they understand the political process. They know where they came from. They understand why certain stereotypes are bad. They understand why they need to be home and not try to replicate other people's culture, and why their own culture matters. I can do those things from here. And so those were the reasons that at the time I was really thinking about coming back to Dominica. I also just needed a break from it being cold and gray all the time. So there was that.
So you came back to Dominica when?
I spent the summer here doing research in 2012 to kind of take notes and do my research on whether I could really live here again, because I had been away so long. And then I moved in 2013.
You moved in 2013 to what? What did you come back to?
You know, it was fine. I mean, Dominica was a place like any other place, and that's how I felt. It's like and I still feel that way 5 years later. Dominica is just a full-blown sovereign country with full-blown sovereign country problems, with people making bad choices and people making good choices. I think there's a lot of work we have ahead of us, but I wasn't overwhelmed. I didn't have any nostalgia about it. I walked into it with the sense that, I got really good stories. Like, okay, you're gonna be happy to be home. I got a lot of bad stories. We don't know why you're doing this, why you're here. And for maybe a good 6 months to a year after moving here, people will keep asking me why I'm here. There are a lot of things that I know after this time. I know why people were asking me that question, and I understand why we have certain frustrations, but at the end of the day, I'm home and I have a life here. I said my quality of life has certainly changed, and changed for the better, I would say. But the challenges that I face in Dominica, and there are challenges, I always feel more equipped and more confident to address because I am home, right? And that's a very different feeling. So I don't think it's, the why I came back here is a question people still pose to me after all this time, especially now. They're like, well, we don't know how you made it this long here. But everybody's looking for someone else to save us from a problem that we think is such a bad problem that Dominica is not good enough. And I constantly, since I've been here, I've been telling people, one of the biggest problems I have with Dominica is how we have low national self-esteem. We think everything outside is better than what we have. We think everybody coming from overseas, and I've experienced it. When I was here the first year, everybody wanted to talk to Dr. Esprit. I think people respect me. I'm very fortunate to have that. But there is a certain point where you realize, well, I'm no longer a foreigner, so I get this type of answer. And I mark the shift in my experience in dealing with certain types of situations, professionally and personally. Because after a while, it's like, you're from here now, so your opinion matters less, or you don't know as much. And especially if you're young and a woman doing that, it becomes a little harder. And I think that ties back to the same problem like I'm saying. You can never go to Jamaica and see those things happen. They might fight by themselves, but it's always Jamaica first, right? There's always this sort of public face of national pride that I find we can work on outside of independence time. I think it's something that we need to really try to push in schools, really try to get people to see being home is fine. I wish I had known that. I'm happy for the experience I have, but I wish it's something that I had internalized a lot earlier than I did now.
I'm just reading a comment there. Oh, you said it. The low national self-esteem. So you came back to Dominica, and what did you do in terms of work, in terms of...
I took an 8-month break. Yeah,
doing what?
I did research. I learned more about my family history. I started working on... I was working on a book at the time.
Okay.
We've
not spoken on your writings yet, but
I was working on a book at the time. I'm still kind of working on it because I went and did all these other awesome things. And then I was doing a lot of research, and I had hired some young people to kind of help me sort it out and stuff. And my uncle had given me a box of stuff. I told him, I have these things. You do digital things. Because one of the areas I study is digital humanities, which sort of brings all the areas I talked about together with technology. And he's like, do something with that. So I started scanning them and learning all these things. And they were really, really good pieces of Dominica history. And then I got a job as the editor of the newspaper, the Chronicle. And I met my boss at the time, Mr. Mike Jones, who sort of kind of was a very strange to me at first. I was like, I can't believe I come to Dominica and I'm working for a white man. I thought I left this behind me. You know, that was and I told him that. He's like, you know, right? That's crazy. He's like, I'm not really white. I'm
You said that to him?
Yeah, so I was like, I can't believe I have to work for a white person again. And he's like, for real? Seriously, I know what you mean. And he laughed. He's like, I'm from the Rizzo Valley, so it's okay. And we kind of hit it off. I mean, I miss Michael. He died in 2016, and it was one of those relationships where you feel like you've known this person your entire life, because we really got along so well to the point where we always make jokes. I even make jokes with his family that I can't break up with them. I'm always like, we're sort of a family now, right? Because of that. And he was a very good mentor, and he helped me understand a lot about the sort of layout of Dominica as it is now, and what things I needed to know and how I should, certain things I should kind of be cognizant of as I try to build a career or try to make professional decisions or even personal decisions. Very good mentor and very kind person, and he helped me a lot. And he was also a person who didn't let me sulk a lot. He was very good at pulling you out of a bad space or a space where you would get frustrated very easily. He would spin it, and not in this sort of dismissive way, but in a way to let you know, you have control over the situation, you can handle it, so you go ahead and do that. So I really enjoyed I worked at the Chronicle as the editor in an election year, and that was one of the best. In hindsight, it was really fun. Because I have such a troubled relationship to politics, to partisan politics as it is, because I'm an academic and I like to just sit and read my things and be objectively critical of what's going on and so on. But it really helped me build up this sense that you can participate, you can have a voice, you can have opinions, and you can do those things, and you can not fight dirty, you can be a good citizen. You can practice citizenship in the way it's supposed to be. You are supposed to be a political person. Your government is you. You're supposed to care about what's happening. You're supposed to say, I like this and I don't like that, and not necessarily feel like you are going to lose, or you have to beat down other people in order for that to happen. We can all have our say. And you know what? Sometimes in a democracy, the other guy wins. Because that's what the good democracies are, right? I learned that line from the West Wing, I'll tell you. And that's just how it is. But you live to fight another day, and you go back and you do the work again. And sometimes somebody doesn't like what you say, and they will think it's too harsh, or they'll think whatever. And you know what? You already said it. So you stand by it, and then you move on to the next thing. And
That's right.
They move on too.
That's right.
But the minute you start living your life according to this perception that you must shift and chuck and jive over what is temporary situation instead of looking at what the issues are, right? I think we need a little more of that in Dominica. I think people are being punks about, and that's just the way to say it. I mean, you can, and you don't have to disagree with everything just because you're on the other side, or you don't have to agree with everything just because you are on one side. You can. There is room for that. And I think we've internalized all this idea about, oh, you have to be afraid to say it. And a lot of people seem to feel like, oh, they're going to lose their job or they'll have persecution. But it takes more than one person to act in a way that demands that respect and demands that balance for the balance to be maintained. So if everyone stops doing it, then you won't get what you want. You won't have that balance because people will figure, well, I can have my way. The minute I say something, they're going to pull back. So there's no need for any type of balance. There's no need for checks and balances. And I honestly think, being Dominica helped me have a better sense of what the landscape, where we are as a country, where we are as a society. And I'm like I say, I always present my challenges and present my concerns in formal ways because I have the opportunity to do so because of the work that I do and the relationships I have built in Dominica. But I think we can be hopeful about things and still challenge and be critical about them. It's not all doom and gloom, and it's not all, oh, everything is perfect. I think we need to challenge ourselves to be a little more critical as well.
Oh gosh, we need a few more like you to come here and speak like that, Dr. Esprit.
No, we can do that without having to go on a pulpit and run for office.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I like that. I really do like that. Let us talk about Create Caribbean before we talk about your stint at the Dominica State College, where you currently reside, in terms of. Well, we'll talk about that.
So yeah, I'm Create Caribbean. Like I said, I was I had been working for.
Who is James Esprit?
James Esprit is my uncle.
He's listening.
He's always listening. He's always present, you know.
Okay.
He's very good at showing up for us.
All right.
And is he saying things?
No, he just said I am listening. That's all he's saying for now.
He's just yeah. So when I came back, for the time I was in grad school, I had been doing a lot of work in understanding how technology shapes the work that happens in the Caribbean. That's one of the things I wrote about for my dissertation. I was really interested in how advancements in technology were helping people with reading culture. That's one of the things I'm writing about. And so I came to do research on that, but I had worked on other types of projects that brought what we call study of humanities to technology. For example, I worked on a project that helped to visualize how one African American community in Charlottesville was completely wiped out by gentrification and urban renewal. So they had moved all these black people out of the community, and they ripped them out, and they bought their lands for a fraction of what it was worth, and then they scattered them all over the country, and they wiped out that area and built a shopping mall, like a walking mall. And so it was really interesting to work on that. It's one of the very first what we call digital humanities projects that I worked on. And so I was really interested in finding ways for the technology to help me tell better stories about Caribbean people, Caribbean history, and where we were going. And a lot of that involved laying maps over time to see how the neighborhoods change, tracking down the people and putting their information online and helping them to figure out where each other were, who lived in that neighborhood, and so on. So my uncle knew I was doing that work, and I had come to Dominica. I'm like, there's something else I want to do. And I want to be more engaged in teaching young people more experimental ways to learn. But I don't know exactly how to do that yet. So I started by working on this set of material that my uncle had given me, not James, but Francisco. And I started scanning them and trying to find a place for them online. And I had these young girls come to my house to help me to do it, and they would be really interested in the history, and I would be talking to them about what the pictures meant, or who was in the picture, and then they would ask my uncle what that one meant, because we couldn't figure out who. We had to identify the people in the pictures and label them. A lot of the things that we were looking at were material from the Alliance movement in the 1970s. My uncle was a member of the Alliance movement, and so we were looking at pictures trying to figure out who these people were, and then realizing they were kind of significant people. So watching these young girls kind of learn about Dominica through that process was really, really interesting to me, because they had never seen anything like this before, and they were not learning this in school. And so I was like, I have to try to find a way to bring all the things I like together so that I can get to do my work. But this is also a really interesting opportunity to get young people really interested in history and culture and to know more about Dominica and the Caribbean. And I talked to my friends who were in the US and some of my friends who were here, and I decided, let's make a thing where I can have my own lab and I can just do this with students so that I can design my projects. I can have them work on it. But Dominica doesn't know anything about digital humanities, so I had to do it in the context of research. And I had to really talk to people about bringing those two things together, technology and research. And that's when, in 2014, I kind of formalized Esprit Caribbean. And Mike Jones was the original graphic designer for our logo. So I spoke to him about it, and he helped me. He said, what do you want it to look like? And so we spent a good 3 months working on the logo alone. And I had all of these things in place before I even formalized what it was. And I called it Create Caribbean because I wanted this idea of creativity to be central to what we were doing. That it was going to be a space that wasn't about me talking to them all the time. In fact, I try not to talk to them at all, but they keep talking to me, these children.
I wonder why.
They keep talking to me. And let them really just engage the material as they meet it, ask questions themselves, learn things while they're working, and use the technology that they like so much to do something that's good and productive. And so that's when I formalized Create Caribbean. And I really wanted, when I first designed Create Caribbean, it was really supposed to be meant in partnership with a library system. And I had conversations with the library before in Dominica and what work we could do together. And some of those things were very, very bureaucratic processes that, because, you know, it's a government office, and there's some things that can't be helped. And so I founded this as a non-profit, and I had my own little entity, but it was something that could operate entirely virtually. I could do it from my house, I could do it from anywhere, it was mobile. And that's the great thing about Create Caribbean. In its design, the work doesn't require a physical space for it to happen. It makes it certainly easier.
Yes.
And so I wanted to do it with the library and sort of reach out to school, because I figure if we catch students young, we can have an opportunity to help them build this real interest in things, and it doesn't have to be somebody who's an IT expert to do it. I would introduce them to the tools and some of the software and stuff that were already designed. But doing it with the library meant that I would have to do extra work to get to the young people. And so I approached Dr. Peters with the idea. And actually, I first talked to a colleague of mine, Miss Riviere, Nadine Riviere, and she set up a meeting for me at the college to pitch this idea to the school. And so I had a meeting with some of the staff there, and everybody seemed pretty excited about it at the time. And so that was the beginning of the relationship with Dominica State College for Create Caribbean. And that relationship preceded my work there. One of the reasons I ended up working at Dominica State College was because I wanted to teach the students who were joining this program certain skill sets that would help us do our work better. I had designed a class as an adjunct lecturer that I would teach with this program, and I started teaching that class, and it's digital humanities research. And the students started coming, and
First in the Caribbean.
the first digital humanities center in the Caribbean. There are a bunch of them all over the world. I was just in Mexico at the international conference last week, and it is the first one in the Caribbean in all languages. So it's in our academic community, it's a pretty big deal.
Of course.
But here it's just me and the children
doing your thing.
Right. And so yeah, and then we entered into this partnership, and the college has been very kind to allow us the use of space and resources and access to the students to be able to do that work. Dr. Peters was very supportive of the idea of this research institute and knew that that was a gap that the college had that he wanted to develop over time. And so that partnership worked really well as a result of that. And I didn't just limit it to just the technology programs. I started doing workshops on technology for faculty, for the professors at the college, and trying to engage them in both use of technology in the classroom, as well as research and opportunities for them to further their own research or their interest in that if they had it, or for research they need to do in order to teach. So I did some workshops in that capacity for a while. And then I worked as Director of Institutional Research at Dominica State College, helping the college to collect data on itself in order to develop.
I think that was a natural.
Yes.
Natural.
Right,
decision.
exactly.
Yeah.
So at that time, my job, and at that time, Tropical Storm Erica happened right when I started that role. And so I was responsible for gathering all information and disseminating all information about and to students who were affected by the hurricane. And the technology that I used for Create Caribbean came extremely handy, because I had to visualize maps, show them create all these surveys about trying to track down where the students were, what they needed, how we could help them, map it so that the president and the board and other people could see exactly where they were. And so the technology really worked well in that environment, and under duress, it was really good for us to be able to document that. And so I took those skills and applied them to other areas of the college that we need to really understand better, and in order to take the college to the next level in terms of development, because it's a young school. I mean, the universities are hundreds of years old, because the college is 15 years old. So we're in the process of building and enhancing our programs, and this was a useful time to come in and do some research on how to improve.
And you eventually moved on to the role of the registrar and Dean of Academic Affairs?
I did. that was a really interesting time. It was in 2016, and I had just gone through some sort of personal. I was ill for a while, and I was recovering, and and I get this message saying we need someone to fill this position. Would you be interested? And I said, only be interested if I can do my academic affairs work, because the work I was doing on the college with academic affairs was really important to me. I underestimated the volume, and I also overestimated my ability. Not that I don't have any. I think I did well. Let me put it that way. That's what I like to say today. But it was those two roles, taking them on at the same time, was ambitious, and it was fun at first. It was. I'm very driven. I'm very career driven. I was like, this is great stuff. And Dr. Peters doesn't really. He's like, this is gonna be great stuff for you, see, because he just want me to do the work for him, and he's like, yes, this is gonna be great. You're gonna like it, and you can work anywhere else in the world.
He was trying to sweeten you up
all the time, all the time. So he said, you can work anywhere else in the world once you do it, and it was true. I gained so much experience, and I had so much autonomy to do work and to build things and improve things on my own that it did really help my career quite a bit. So I do have to say he was not wrong. He was right. He was exactly right. But it was a lot of work. It was a lot of hours. It was a lot of time. And it was more interaction with people on a daily basis than I had ever had in my career. Part of the reason why people like me are attracted to scholarly life is because we get to spend time alone with our books. All I ever wanted to do was read my books and write about them. Mm-hmm. I say this all the time. Every time something's going wrong at work, I'm like, this is not me reading my books and writing about them. That's all I ever want to do, is be quiet somewhere, reading my books and writing about them. Not having to get dressed up to go. I can just do that at home. I don't have to do any of this other stuff. So it was a big difference having to go from everybody coming at you all the time and being the registrar job at Dominica State College, the way the job is designed, is probably the most visible role that anyone, especially management, has at the school. And the students think they should go to the office, but they just go to the registrar. They think you are the person who can fix everything.
Oh, wow.
Even though you're working with a team of people that have probably the best staff you can ask for to handle situations. But they still think it's you. And every time they will come to the office and say, well, the registrar told me, but you didn't talk to me. They think it's yourself, exactly, like the registrar told me. Because they associate so many problem-solving mechanisms with that role. And so the expectation is always that you have the power to fix somebody's life. You have the power to make a decision that's going to impact somebody else. And it is that serious, and I took it very seriously in that way. But I also had this other role where I was doing research, making sure we meet our standards internationally, best practices for teaching, making sure we have systems in place for building programs and making sure requirements are met, and we have our programs are 21st century programs, and ensuring that we are meeting all those targets. And we are, I think, Dominica State College academically, when it comes to our curriculum, I think we are on par with all our international universities. Our students, about a month ago, I had somebody call me. I think it's somebody you work with. Someone called me and said, "Oh, my daughter got all these credits transferred, and they're going to give her even more than what they're supposed to give her." So yeah, so these are always good stories, and these are people going to school in the United States, in Canada, etc., other places. So we have, despite the controversies or rumors or all these, we like a bad story. We like to hang on to a bad story, no matter how old that bad story is. It can be somebody has changed their life 10 times since then, and we're still on that old story. I think Dominica State College has some old stories. And part of my job when I was there was really invested in changing the narrative, and I hope I managed to do that in some way, because some of these narratives are really, really old ones that predate my time there or Dr. Peter's time there.
It's already.
Yeah, and we're changing. Again, this whole thing about I'm that way, I'm always going to be that way. We need to dispel that. We need to allow for situations to change, institutions to change, people to change, and for the better. So I think there are ways that the school, especially in terms of its academic curriculum, is very, very strong, and the students are being well prepared to go on to other degrees. And that has a lot to do with their teachers, the classroom, the way in which that they learn in that environment. So I wanted to really contribute to that in addition to my work as registrar, which is all about paperwork and records and making sure the transcripts are good and making sure the schedule is all great things, and they really, really matter. The school cannot run without that office, but they're also very, very structured and you know, logistic things that require a lot of time and attention that you cannot give to other things.
Yes.
Right.
Earlier on, we spoke about, I was saying to you that someone said to me that just today, that Dr. Esprit, people like Dr. Esprit or Dr. Esprit does not belong in Dominica. And you told me you wanted to talk about that. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the other thing that I think the viewers and listeners are not going to be very happy to hear, but we must talk about it.
We must talk about it.
We must talk about it.
Yeah, people like me don't belong in Dominica. What does that mean? I'm from here.
I think the person was trying to say that, you know, you're so intelligent, you're so bright, you're so you've achieved so much that you probably need to be somewhere else making a whole lot of more money.
This money problem that we have.
Yeah.
You know, I like money. I like nice things. I get my nails done with gel. I like nice clothes. I go shopping. I have Kate Spade purses. I do all the nice things, right? Like, but if I was making a life decision based on money, I would probably not be a very happy person. Now, don't get me wrong. I have grown over time and with therapy to be a little
Nancy,
more, yes,
saying hi to Nancy.
Yes, yeah, I mean, everyone is a Nancy. Like, I don't know how else to tell. I have learned over time to practice more asking for what I'm worth and demanding it. That is financially or whatever. I have especially working in Dominica, I have had to sort of advocate for that when I know there is inequity. But like I said, Dominica can only do so much. Dominica is one of the lowest paying incomes in the whole Caribbean. This is something we need to work. These are some policy issues that we need to be talking about, and on half of the political conversations need to be transformed into some things about those. What can we actually do to solve those problems? So saying that, oh, I need to pay more, I can make more money. So I'm like, oh, surely I can, but I can also pay more taxes. I can also work 20 of my 24 hours in my day. I can do all the things that do not allow me a quality of life to be here at my home, feeling like myself at all times, right? That there's a cost to that people don't factor in when they move to another country. And I will tell you how many people since I made that move who are immigrants to the United States called me and said, I want to do that. How did you do that? I want to go home and I want to do. I get as many of those calls as I get, oh, why are you here? And this is why I go back to this little national self-esteem. Maybe I needed to be here so you can realize how much you need to pay people who work very hard for their degrees.
True.
Maybe now, people like me can come here and you can be like, oh my God, yes, you deserve her. Yes, you do, but you also need to pay for that work. You also need to stop asking Dr. Esprit for free favors every 5 days because you know how much money she spent for her degree. And you value that, and you value the work she does, and the time it takes to write X thing or to produce this document or whatever. So yes, you put some value behind her name, and you put, like Beyonce said, put respect on a check. But that doesn't mean she doesn't belong here, right? She does belong here. It's my home, and there are lots of PhDs. How many PhDs from Mao alone I do? Like at least 5, right? The first PhD I ever knew was Valda Henry.
Dr. Henry,
right?
yes.
And I grew up seeing Valda all over the place, like a regular person just like me. But why does she have to go all over the world to do her work when she can do her work here? It's not about, oh, I don't belong here. It's that we deserve to ask for more of ourselves. And the fact that there are only a few of us fighting to say that, I guess the natural response is always to go somewhere else, means we're not solving the problem, and this problem is going to remain a problem forever. We have 200,000 people living outside of Dominica who are Dominican people. That's the last stat I checked.
More than 3 times our population.
Yes. So this is a bigger conversation than just, oh, somebody like me doesn't belong in Dominica. I think more people like me belong in Dominica, as a matter of fact. Is it always the right thing to give? People keep talking about this my decision to be some kind of service project, as some kind of patriotism or something. I like Dominica just fine, but this is my home. I just don't know how else to say that I can be here if I want, and it doesn't have to have any type of politics attached to it. Because this is where I'm from, this is my home, and I don't attach this type of narrative of, daughter of the soil gives back kind of thing to it. It's a very selfish decision. I happen to really care about doing good work in my community, so I do it because that's the kind of person I am. But it's not about that. And if we make every story sound like this sort of fantastical thing, then we'll never normalize the idea that people like me should be home. We should all be here. We have to make it a normal thing that people want to come back home. Make it sound like it's a natural thing to do and stop saying, oh well, why do you come back? Certainly there are challenges, and that those things are not going to be solved in one day, but it's certainly, I hope my experience of being here and sharing that story about returning home is one that will prompt this conversation to happen. You know, I got a lot of comments about that. It's like, well, how do you survive it? I mean, it's fine. I go to the bank, I buy my food, I do things I like. I mean, there are things that I don't like about living in Dominica, certainly, but there are things I don't like about living in New York.
Anywhere in the world,
I hate the
I'm
MTA,
sure.
and yet I have to take the train, right? So guess what? We adjust and we adapt, but this is always to fix and this is always to build, and it doesn't have to be this romance about it, you know. And it especially frustrates me when I see the news dominated by all these, oh, ex-person living in far away land is doing something successful, let's praise them for being Dominican. And then when they get here, it's like, why are you here? Because
yeah, I get you. Now, while we speak about that,
yes,
you also, 5 years later, making a decision to move on again.
yes.
Tell us about having to move on now.
You know,
And I don't know how much you want to tell us about what
I'm okay with telling everybody.
Yeah,
I mean,
tell
they're
us.
going to find out next week when I'm no longer here.
You mean you're leaving soon?
I'm leaving soon.
You're leaving soon. So
Yes.
Dr. Esprit is actually leaving Dominica and moving on to other things, and
Yes.
she's going to tell us.
I am moving to Antigua, and I'm going to be living there. It's not so far. See,
No, it's not.
I like to
For
tell
20 minutes away?
people about half an hour.
Half an hour.
I wish the flights were cheaper for half an hour, but we have to do something about that.
Yeah.
But again, let us not romanticize the decision. This is a personal decision. It's also a professional one. It's time for me to move on to the next thing in my career. Academics do this all the time,
Okay.
right? It's also because Great Caribbean, as you hear in the name, is not Great Dominica, it's Great Caribbean. There are things that I want to do with the research institute, the work we do there, that I can do differently in other places, and so I'm going to move to do that. But my home is here, Great Caribbean's home is here, and I will be very much invested in continuing to develop what I've already built here in terms of the work that I do with Great Caribbean. So yes, this is a location change, but I like to think of it like moving to another state, because I'm really about the regional integration. I think we downplay it, and I think it's one of the reasons why, and I also like to move around a lot. I'm not afraid to just pick up and go. So it's an exciting adventure for me. I've had a lot of people meet me, people I have interacted with who have told about that, or who have told that I'm no longer going to be working at Dominica State College at the very least, who said, oh, I'm sad, I'm disappointed. And I really want to query, because I've heard the word disappointed a lot, and I really want to query what we disappointed in exactly. Certainly they're not disappointed in me, they're sad. They're disappointed about the loss they feel by one person, that the impact that I've made. And I'm very, very happy and proud to have been able to make a contribution that leaves an impact on people. But I also don't think, yes, we need more people to come and do all that. But there are people here who do good work, have had the opportunity to work with really good colleagues at Dominica State College in some capacity, who are teaching in classrooms with students every day and having more impact on their daily lives than I had in my role as registrar, sitting in an office managing the school, right? I've seen a lot of that, there are people doing this work here, but do they get the visibility? Do they get the support? Do they get the same type of resources to be able to do their work? Are they in positions like me? And I always try to talk about myself. It's not that I am not understanding. Yes, I'm great and have done all these things, but I'm also in a very privileged position, and I have had opportunities that may not exactly have been available to other people. And so I'm very aware of that. Yes, I can say certain things and have it register in some areas because I am Dr. Esprit. Because our culture respects those kinds of credentials in a way that hearing it from somebody else may not have that same impact, and we need to be honest about that. So what are we disappointed in? We're disappointed in that the way that we have made ourselves limited to who and what has access to build this country. So when somebody comes and does it, they feel like, oh, well, that's my last hope. No, it's not. There are a ton of people out there doing what I do. And they're good. They're my peers. I know some of them. They can do the work. But do we have that confidence in them? Do we give them a chance? Or do we create ways for them to be more frustrated in what they're doing, so they get jaded and they back out and they get tired? And they just deal with their students here or deal with their community here, and no one ever hears about them, right? I'd like to see more of those people in the spotlight.
Absolutely.
Right. But yeah, I think that's how I feel about it. This is not changing anything about. I think everybody's waiting for a dramatic story, just like they were waiting for a dramatic story when I first came here. Nobody kicked me out of the US. I just quit my job and I came home. I can do that.
You
right?
can do that.
I think everybody was awaiting the big story when I came, and now they're waiting for the big story. There's no big story. This is just Schuyler doing what she does.
Just making a decision.
Making a decision and being professionally ambitious and building a life for herself. And again, maybe getting some more money to buy nice things. Because I like them.
Yes.
But yeah, that's about me and my choices, but it doesn't change anything about how I feel about them. Because it certainly has given me reason to want to work harder to fix some of the problems. Because I do feel like there are very important things that we need to do as a country to make it more sustainable for young professionals to live here. There needs to be better resources for young professionals who want to go into business to sustain themselves. I know I have so many friends who are professionals who have advanced degrees, who are working at the top levels of their management all over this country, and they're working all these hours and then they have to go home and do something else. They're working in their careers, they're having a side hustle, they're doing all of these things, and time after time, there's always this roadblock or this something that is in place that is maybe a little discouraging. There's so many young people who want to start their own business or have skills that should be incorporated into larger companies or small businesses as they are, but they're trying to do their own things on the side and they're doing this little side hustle, and there's just not enough. It's just, we are a small country and we're developing, but we really need to tap into why we're turning off the light on so much creative energy in the country.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I think it's not that all of these people are working in what we would presume to be very traditional roles in the daytime, and there's so much talent, there's so many professions underneath that are actually really skillful in nation building, and they're left out of the conversation, or nobody knows they do that because they do it on the side, or people only know about this prestige center in the Caribbean when they go on Google because only the Americans are talking about it. Right? You see what I'm saying? So
I get you.
I certainly believe that we have more work to do for tapping into that creative energy of young people, young professionals, and people who do not come from some type of wealth or some type of financial security, to help them be able to not just start businesses or give them entrepreneurship, mentorship, or whatever. Part of the entrepreneurship part is the actual content that you're making, whatever the product is. You have to have creative energy to be able to continue to create it. You have to be able to sustain it over time. How do I tap out of what I'm doing to design the next big project that Craig Caribbean is going to work on? I need time to do that, but I'm working 80 hours a week, you know, and I'm bringing work home, and I have to work on that. I work every Saturday since 2013, right? That's a lot of my personal time that I have to give to building a business. I've had to put personal capital on it. I've had to spend time, a grant, non-profit, and the hair service. Like, everything about it has to be volunteer.
Yeah.
You can have a perfect business model running a non-profit, and that's what I'm trying to do. But it takes me a while to do a grant application. It takes almost 2 months. So all of these resources need to be really made available, and we need to have more conversations with people who are experiencing those things in order for, because people my age are going to be the next government, right?
Is that what would make you stay, Doc? If you, I mean, some of the things you just spoke about, if those things were available, if it were, different, probably.
There would be
would you be leaving next week?
There would be a higher likelihood that I would stay if those things were different. But I also know Dr. Esprit is the kind of person to get on a plane because she likes them. That's that. Let's put that on the table. I like to go somewhere. But yes, those things would make a difference. Those things would help to make the decision tougher.
Yeah.
They might not end up making the decision, but they would give me pause. Yeah.
It is 28 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. We're going to wrap things up by 10:30. I know there are people asking me, what time are you going on until tonight? I think this has just been such an amazing, inspiring program with you. Interestingly, Dr. Esprit, your invitation came when I saw your post on Facebook saying that you were leaving, and I'm like, well, you didn't exactly say you were leaving in so many words, but you could pick it up. And I was like, oh no, I need to get her in the spotlight, and I made contact, but I'm very happy. I'm delighted that I brought you on the program tonight, and I think we need to have a few more like you who are, I wouldn't say brave enough to speak, but bold enough to say what's on their mind. But what's on your mind is not anything to bring down anybody or to make anyone or anything or any institution look bad. I think your ultimate goal is to uplift and to inspire and to motivate and to do well and to do good. So I know even with you leaving, even if you said you like the plane, I know at the end of the day, you're doing what you have to do. And it's bottom line, that's what it is. So I really want to thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to give you the opportunity to share some final comments with us, but I am really, really, really inspired by you. I wish probably I had made an effort to spend more time with somebody like you, just spend time talking and vibing and, just in your presence, in your environment. But maybe sometime in the future we can get to do that. But Dr. Esprit, I'm going to give you the opportunity to share your final comments, what you want to leave with, what you want to leave with the listeners and viewers and just everyone who's listening tonight.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for inviting me. I was very skeptical about doing this show because anything that directs the attention to me and not to my work always feels weird. But I'm happy I did it, and it's been a good conversation. I do want to say you brought up some points in your final remarks here that have me thinking a lot about what it means for you to be a good role model. We like to talk about that in our society, and I know how many people I encounter, young people who tell me, I really look forward to what you have to say or what you write or all of those things, and I try my best to always be an honest me. My honesty is sometimes very, very mean. I will tell you exactly, but I will also be very helpful in helping you understand why I'm making this comment. But it's also very important for me to be myself and accept people as they are. That's one of the things I always say. Accept our society as we are and learn what we need to fix and fix it instead of sitting there beating a dead horse over all the things that are wrong. And if I can leave nothing else with my listeners or with my students especially who are listening to me, a lot of them are sad that I'm leaving and they think their whole world is gonna fall. I'm not really doing anything. I'm just sitting there telling them to stop talking to me all day long, and they think I'm just working miracles in their lives, but it's because they see me be anxious about things. They've seen me be upset. They've seen me be very disappointed in not having things finished. We've gone through a hurricane together. They've seen me try to build back what we lost. They've seen all my vulnerabilities, and I am that person on purpose in front of them. I could be a different kind of leader where I'm very formal and hide that from them, but I don't, because they have to understand what it actually takes to be successful. If you think I'm a successful person, it means that some days you do not want to get out of your bed because you are too tired to do that, or you want to punch the wall because you won't get the things you need to be done on time. Craig Caribbean has a camp coming up on Monday and we're running behind schedule, and something today I think was taking like real. And so they see all those parts. So then when they see the result and they hear, oh, Dr. Esprit did something, and they can appreciate that, because I am not a dead person that they don't understand. I'm not hiding those things from them. I'm just telling them, do your work. No, sometimes you don't need to do your work. Sometimes you need to just leave that work alone and go do something bad, like go eat ice cream with your friends or whatever bad people do. I don't know, right? You need to do those things. And being myself all the time and feeling, I wish that for everybody, that you can feel like yourself and be who you are and not feel like there is consequence to that. And know that it will still get you to success. It might take you a longer time. It might be harder. You might feel like you're not getting your way, but everything I've ever wanted in my life, I have it. And it's not been easy to get it, but I have it. I've worked for it, and I have prepared for it, and I have asked for help to get it, and I have those things. So, but it means being honest with yourself and being open to those things. So I want everybody to know that, and that applies to ourselves, that applies to our country as well. I think it's important to know that.
Dr. Esprit, I want to wish you well on your new journey, your new venture. And I know that Dominica, as you said, Dominica is home. That's where you are. And I know you will be seeing you. Yes. You're just a 30 minute plane ride away. We'll have to talk to Liat for you on your behalf. So you can come back a little bit more often. But we know that you're going to be excellent wherever you go. And we certainly just want to wish you well. And I know I say that on behalf of everybody who is listening and viewing. You are an amazing human being. And I'm happy to know you. And I'm happy to have had you here tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. And on that note, we wrap up the In the Spotlight radio program for tonight. Thank you to all those of you who listened via Q95 FM radio and those of you who viewed via Facebook Live. We will be back here next week, Monday, for another program. Until then, to have a good night, everyone. Sleep tight. I always say don't let the bed bugs bite. Until next time, good night, everyone.